How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Donald Trump rescinding some Obama era quote unquote guidances that relate to so-called diversity on college campuses. Now, these guidances are not the law. There's already a law in place that allows colleges to engage in race-based admissions, and that came about in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. There was already affirmative action and stuff like that, but in 2016, the Supreme Court ruled on it. I'll link to that in the box below. They said that it's constitutional to consider race during college admission. However, it is not a requirement for the college to consider race. The Obama era guidances heavily encouraged the use of race in college admissions, and also the guidances were there to protect universities away from lawsuits. There's currently a big lawsuit going on right now as it relates to Harvard University, because in 2014, a group of Asian students came together and joined in a lawsuit that says that they're being discriminated against when it comes to admissions. Asians generally have the highest test scores out of everybody, white, black, Hispanic, but on the personal rating, which is a metric that some colleges use to admit people, they rank the lowest. Why is that? Maybe it's because they perform so well, they have to get knocked down in other ways in order to allow others in. You understand? So rather than Harvard being mostly Asian and white, you have a handful of blacks and Hispanics in there. The blacks and Hispanics won't have as high test scores or the overall academic ability as their white and Asian counterparts at Harvard. But hey, you got to have diversity, which means in this case, of course, less whites and Asians and more blacks and Hispanics. So therefore, some qualified Asians have to get pushed out. Same thing with the whites. They got to get pushed out to allow room for the blacks and Hispanics to come in. It's very simple. I'm glad that Trump actually did this. Some called it racist. I'm seeing tweets from people talking about Trump said to black Americans, "What do you have to lose?" And then they want to point to that. But my question to people who say that is this: what am I actually losing? If I need the government to give me assistance to get into college, obviously I'm not really ready to go in there. This is 2018. You have the ability to do so many different things. There's not this big white boogeyman on top of your back that's preventing you from being able to get ahead. If you have the academics, if you're a smart person, if you're a skilled person, you can do whatever. If you don't have the academics to get into a Harvard, why not go to a regular state school? Okay, not everybody's cut out to go to these high-level programs. I think it was Thomas Sowell who was talking about when he was a math teacher at MIT. He was teaching a very advanced program. I'm not good at math myself. I'm not ashamed to admit it. So I know I would not be able to go to a high-level math program. The problem is when you have affirmative action, it ignores academic ability. You may be in a certain percentile lower than the average student, but because you're black and Hispanic, you get an artificial bump up to the higher percentile. That bump up will not give you the skill or the IQ necessary to be able to complete the task that you're given at the particular school. So of course, according to Thomas Sowell, when these black kids would go there, mind you, these kids aren't dumb. They're smart, but just not good enough to be in this very advanced, high-paced program. When these kids go there, they're not at all prepared. So what happens is they end up ranking the lowest. They are struggling. They're upset. And of course, somehow they find some pro-black person on campus. It could be your Sean King type, Rachel Dolezal type, Nkechi Diallo. It could be one of these kind of people wearing a dashiki or whatever, telling them how oppressed they are, talking about it's the white man's fault why you can't do well in math. The reality is that they should go to a less strenuous program, still a good school. I'm not saying go to, Podunkville University. You could go to a school that's still good. You would still be able to go and major in whatever you want. You may be able to come out and be a doctor, chemist, whatever. You are just not ready for that program. But they don't tell these kids that. They say that it's the white man's fault. So now you as a parent, you sent your kid to school bright-eyed, bushy tail, full of hope, and they come back, militant, wanting to hurt people, is because of what they have been told, and the government, in conjunction with the school system, the higher education school system, putting them in a situation where their mind has been altered. They think that they are good enough to be in this high level program, but they're not. Affirmative action has artificially placed them there. Then they think that it's the white man. That's the reason why they're not doing well. But the reality is that they shouldn't be there. They should be in the program that's best suited for their actual academic performance. I'm not the biggest fan of standardized tests, but at a certain point, your SAT, ACT, all these tests mean something. They don't come out of nowhere. They are generally an accurate representation of where you are academically. If you don't measure up to program standards, you shouldn't be placed there artificially because of your race. Actually, that is racist. So all these journalists talking about, oh, Trump is a racist, it's that and the third. How can you say that when he has come up with a thing that does not allow people to be judged on their race? How can you? To me, it doesn't really make any sense. It would make sense if he said that you must go to a particular school based on your race. That would be racist. But he's saying, let it be about academics. Let that be the reason. And reality is, he did not actually overturn affirmative action when it comes to college admissions. He just rescinded the rules that allow these universities to just do really crazy things without being challenged at all. Matter of fact, in a 2016 Supreme Court decision that upheld affirmative action in school, there's a little bit of leeway there for challenges. Justice Anthony Kennedy, who unfortunately voted for affirmative action in school, he put a little something in there in a decision that says schools must review their affirmative action programs to see if they're actually efficient, to determine the efficacy of them. So if Harvard University has this lawsuit on their back, maybe that right there is evidence that it's not going well. But see, the guidances that Obama put into place were what some of these schools would use as deterrence away from any kind of lawsuits or any kind of exploration into whether their practices are effective or not. Because I think that we all know, as I close, that having affirmative action, race-based admissions, these practices are not really effective. The most effective thing would be to have Black and brown kids be prepared more from school. I've said this before on streams, on my videos. What happens a lot with Black and Hispanic kids is that we are not ready from an early age. Asian and white kids generally have their mothers at home or some kind of preschool education, if you understand what I mean. At home education. You got the mothers reading to them, singing to them when they're in the womb. They actually care about their children. Okay, so by the time they go to school, they're already ready. They can spell their own name, tie their own shoes, color in a line. They can count to 10, maybe even 100. They may even know the 7 continents. They have some basic information. A Black kid going to school, he's 5 years old. He didn't do any kind of pre-K. He didn't do any kind of nothing. He's just a blank slate. So he's 5, 6 years old. Can't read at all, can't write his own name, can't do anything. But the white kid and Asian kids are already far beyond him. And that practice of being prepared follows all the kids all throughout their entire school year, which is why you may see at elementary school where the white kids have an 80% literacy rate in kindergarten and the Black kids have like a 30% rate. It's because of what they learn at home. You can't blame that on the actual school itself. How can you blame the preparedness rate of kids who are in their first year of school on the school itself? You have to blame that on the parents or the lack thereof. So I'm glad that Trump did this. Hopefully affirmative action itself gets overturned. I doubt that will happen. Like I said, it got ruled on in the high court in 2016 as it relates to schools. But something must happen here. Race-based admissions is racist itself. If you don't want to be a racist, if you don't want to be a person that is judging people based on race, then affirmative action shouldn't be in your wheelhouse. There are plenty of colleges here in the United States that will take you if you have the grades. Shout out to my man Isaac over in El Paso, over at UTEP. That's University of Texas at El Paso. Had a great time with you guys last year, but he was talking about a rule that if you are in the 8%, the top 8% of your class, you are guaranteed admission into any college in Texas, no questions asked. Okay. So that should be the things we champion, not this race-based admission. Oh, because you're black or Hispanic, you have to get in here and we're going to lower the standards just for you. And I think that's also what Common Core is. You're lowering the standard. So rather than the education gap in mathematics and other things being like this, the gap is lower, but everybody's lower. Okay. So rather than being like this, you're like this now. You understand what I mean? Everybody is lower in the sake of equality, and that is a core tenet of socialism, which is what you don't want, because it starts with the seed and it grows to a forest, and at that point, that's when you might start hanging from the trees. So what do you think? Do you think Trump was right to rescind the Obama era guidances on affirmative action in school? If so, please explain to me why in the comments below. If you think that he was wrong, please explain to me why in the comments below. Have you benefited from affirmative action? Do you think that affirmative action hurts people? Does it help people? I think, of course, as you've been listening to me, that it hurts people. It puts people in the position that they shouldn't be in. It often has them performing worse. They should be in a program that is best suited for them to get the best results out of it. You don't want to be in a place where you failing and struggling, having a hard time, when you could be in a place that's not as strenuous but still good, that was still able to get you a good life. And then a lot of times these kids are paying out the wazoo, all types of crazy money. I think you should just go to a place that's best for you. Don't force the government to put you in a place where you're not necessarily needed. And these colleges, one last thing before I close, these colleges oftentimes don't even really care if those who they place in their particular institutions perform well or not. All they care about is being able to look good. They put you in the brochure and they say, well, look at our very diverse student body. It's all about optics. You're being used as a pawn, and it's not fair. It's unfair. It's unethical. If you appreciate your children, if you care about children in general, don't feed them this lie of you got to have diversity. Tell them to make the best choices for their life, regardless of race. But whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.